Okay, we're going to take a look at evaluating ventilation of exercise testing. So this is in your book as well. Remember, we're going to start with why we have a reduced VO2, and these are all the different things we can look at to evaluate ventilation. Everything highlighted in yellow should have a linear increase with increased workload, and the only thing in green here, VDVT, that should decrease linearly with an increase in workload. So a couple terms, maximum minute ventilation during exercise. It should also increase linearly with an increase in workload. A healthy person at rest should have a VE of 5 to 10 milliliters per kilogram, and with exercise it should increase to 100. You can see in our graph here, a athletically trained person is going to go off the charts. They could be as high as 200 liters per minute. Someone with lung disease, notice they are going to have be limited in their maximum minute ventilation. Now, ventilatory capacity is determined by a person's MVV. To do this, some clinicians use the FEV1 and take it times 35 instead of comparing it to the MVV. However, if you're going to compare it to the MVV with healthy individuals, less than 70% of their MVV is what you would identify as their ventilatory capacity. Somebody with lung disease, they might be equal to or greater than their 80% of their MVV, and this is basically due to them losing any pulmonary reserve. Okay, anytime a person is going to go over their ventilatory capacity, that suggests that they have no pulmonary reserve, or ventilatory reserve, excuse me. Another way we can assess this is if they get to if there's a difference in their predicted minute ventilation max to their measured minute ventilation max. If there's a difference of 10 to 15 liters per minute, then the ventilatory limitation to exercise is most likely present. Another thing that can limit it is going to be flow limitation. Now, ventilatory reserve is going to be the difference between your ventilatory capacity and your maximum minute ventilation. Most people have a reserve of about 20 to 40%. With COPD, it could be less than 20%, or they might not have any reserve at all. As I mentioned before, if their minute ventilation max is greater than their ventilatory capacity, then the patient is ventilatory limited because they have absolutely no ventilatory reserve. Let's go on here. Tidal volume should increase with exercise. As the tidal volume increases, it's going to increase the minute ventilation. So tidal volume should increase first. Once tidal volume gets to 50 or 60% of the vital capacity, then the respiratory rate is going to begin to increase to continue making the minute ventilation higher. Okay, so normally tidal volume should increase first, and then once it gets to about 50% of vital capacity, the respiratory rate should increase. Now, some patients with normal lungs are going to complain of shortness of breath earlier than normal, but it's because they have an abnormal breathing strategy, meaning they're not doing what is considered normal. One example is the patient will have very high respiratory rates with a low tidal volume. These people, although they have normal functioning lungs, they're actually increasing their dead space, which is causing their shortness of breath. Other people might have large tidal volumes but not increase their respiratory rate. Here, there's no actual physiological issue, but it's this abnormal breathing strategy which is causing their shortness of breath. Now, patients with COPD are naturally going to have an abnormal breathing strategy, and it is because they have airflow limitation and they're just unable to increase their ventilation. So to determine this, we actually look at the end expiratory lung volume. So up here we have a normal person, and here's normal tidal breathing, and then they begin to exercise, and we see their end expiratory lung volume will actually become smaller so they can increase their tidal volume. Okay? Someone with COPD, here's their normal tidal breathing. Their end expiratory lung volume is actually larger at normal breathing than someone who's normal. So as they begin to exercise, they cannot increase their end expiratory lung volume because they already have a large one. They're hyperinflated. So as they tend to breathe faster, their end expiratory lung volume actually gets less because they air trap more, and then the only thing they can do is actually increase their respiratory rate, not their tidal volume. So this is an abnormal breathing strategy where they're increasing their respiratory rate instead of their tidal volume, but it's because they have an increased end expiratory lung volume, which causes them to be short of breath sooner. A person with restrictive disease is going to have an increase in respiratory rate because they can't increase their tidal volume. Okay, let's take a look at our RER. Remember, this is our VCO2 to VO2 ratio measured at the mouth. Someone at rest, we usually assume it to be about 0.8. And if you need numbers to see this, this is where your VCO2 is actually less than your VO2. For example, a ratio of 45 to 60. When we do exercise studies, we're actually going to calculate that out. So with exercise, we should see an RER of 1.0 or greater. Now what's happening here is our VCO2 is going to exceed our VO2. So now our ratio is going to switch to like a 70 to 60 ratio, or even higher. Our RER can be a measure of effort. So if we see a person reaches 1.15 for their RER, we can say that they have reached maximal effort. So we can say they gave great effort during their exercise. Now, someone with lung disease, we may not be able to use the RER as a measure of effort because due to their lung disease alone, they may not reach the 1.0 RER. Okay, but this RER of 1.15, if we do reach it, then we can assume the anaerobic threshold has been reached, again, indicating maximal effort. So here we take a look at our different graphs we have here, and each of these are showing horizontally an increase in workload. Okay, this top graph is showing minute ventilation. So as workload increases, we see a linear increase in our minute ventilation. This red line is showing where ventilation is going to continue to increase non-linearly. It's going to like shoot up there, okay? And that is right after our anaerobic threshold has been reached. At this point, well, let me back up. Here we have our lactate, and we see how it increases with exercise. And then we see our bicarb and pH. Our pH should stay the same during exercise up until we reach our anaerobic threshold. And at this point, we might start to see our pH drop because the buffering along with our CO2 being produced no longer keep up, and that's why we see this red increase in ventilation. This is indicating that the amount of CO2 being produced along with the buffering is greater than what the body can get rid of. Okay, so when this happens, this is high capacity exercise, and this is when we have an increase in our lactic acid, and our CO2 increases even more, and it exceeds our capacity of aerobic. Low to moderate, we should see ventilation increasing linearly with VCO2. So here's the low to moderate range up until that anaerobic threshold. So I kind of skipped a little bit here. Going back over to this side, our anaerobic threshold is when our energy demands exceed the body's ability to produce energy by anaerobic metabolism. Okay, so our anaerobic threshold reached tells us about a person's index of fitness. For a normal person, it's going to be 60 to 70% of their VO2 max. If someone with cardiac disease, they probably will be less than 40% of their VO2 max. And someone with lung disease may reach their VO2 max, but their oxygen delivery is going to be affected by their lungs. So once again, low to moderate exercise is up to this anaerobic threshold, but once we get beyond that, then the energy demands by the body is going to exceed what the body's producing by anaerobic metabolism. So the buffering of the bicarb is no longer keeping the pH normal, so the pH starts to drop and we start to have respiratory acidosis. Okay, ventilatory equivalents. We're just going to touch on this quickly. You can have a ventilatory equivalent for oxygen or a ventilatory equivalent for CO2. With oxygen, resting is going to be like 30 to 40, and then with exercise, that should decrease down to about 25, and this is because there should be an improvement in our ventilation perfusion ratio. Remember, we should have some vasodilation, so okay. Over here, our VCO2, with exercise, it should decrease to 25 to 35, but for the most part, it should remain fairly constant. The minute ventilation to VCO2 may estimate maximum tolerable workouts and those with ventilatory limitations. So prior to exercising somebody, you might want to estimate that. Remember, your anaerobic threshold is when there's a steady VO2, okay, right here, and a constant or decreasing CO2 right here. So that's your anaerobic threshold. Once we see an abrupt increase in our VO2, but the VCO2 remains constant, this is when we see that onset of metabolic acidosis that we were talking about on our last slide. Okay, so let's try to take a quick look at our example here. So we already know that our VO2 is decreased. It's 63% of predicted, so we want to know why. The first thing we want to look at is our minute ventilation max. Okay, it's actually 70% of predicted, which isn't too bad. But if we actually subtract out our maximum from our predicted max, we see that that's about a difference of 13 liters, and we said before normal should be 10 to 15. So we're close, but we're on the low end. If we look at our tidal volume to vital capacity ratio, we're at 56, so we know that that there is no abnormal breathing strategies. Our ventilatory equivalent for O2, it started at 47, which is a little high, but it did decrease to 35, so there is appropriate VQ, a change in VQ occurring with exercise. One last thing to look at is our resting RER is 0.8, and the max reached was 0.95. We mentioned before patients with COPD might not reach the 1.15 or maximum effort. So it's hard for us to say that maximum effort wasn't used during this exercise because they didn't achieve a 1.0, because we already know this person has a little bit of lung disease. I forgot to mention, this is the same case we've been working with where the person stopped the test due to shortness of breath. So I think that hits about all of the points I wanted to go over with you. I guess one other thing is because this is 63%, we do know it is a mild to moderate obstructive problem or ventilatory problem. Okay, now I think I've touched on all the points I wanted to touch on.